I want to end on a personal note. Back in the 1990s, when I was working with UNICEF, I coordinated a study on the consequences of armed conflict on children. It won't surprise you to learn that the findings were terribly distressing. But as horrific as the predicament for children was in war, and as terrible as were the consequences, there was always some tiny measure of restraint attaching to what was done to children. Even the most heinous of predators appeared to feel a microscopic twinge of shame. There is none of that when it comes to women. None. In country after country, it's open season on women. Unrestrained, unabashed, unimaginable. And that's why for AIDS-Free World, the organization that I belong to, I have two colleagues here, Julia Greenberg and Shonali Shom, who are available to people through the course of the afternoon and tomorrow. For all of us at AIDS-Free World, that's the ultimate test of legitimacy. To be sure, AIDS is the entry point, but the overriding reality is inescapable. Sexual violence defines the most important struggle of all, the struggle to proclaim and implement gender equality. There will be neither justice nor health for the women of the world without equality. I had intended to end there. I have a few seconds left, and Drummond will allow merciful dispensation. I want to share one anecdote because it made a greater influence on my life than any other. For 3 years at the end of the 1990s, I was part of an Organization of African Unity panel on the genocide in Rwanda. And we spent the entire 3 years visiting the commemorative sites and interviewing the victims. And it was unquestionably the most harrowing experience of my adult life. And at the end of it, one day, we came into Kigali and we met with the group of women who belonged to the Polyclinique d'Espoir, the Polyclinic of Hope, where those who had been sexually assaulted during the genocide gathered together for solace and comfort and solidarity. And we talked to the women, several hundred of them, and they made their submissions and protestations. And at the end of it, the woman who was running the polyclinic said to us, "There are 3 women in an adjacent room who want to talk to you. Would members of the panel be willing to do so separately?" And 3 of us said yes. And we entered a little antechamber. I remember it vividly because it had a tin roof and the sun was beating down ferociously. It was desperately hot. There were 3 cots in the room with 1 woman sitting on each. And on the first cot was a very young woman in her early 20s who had had blunt and sharp instruments shoved into her vagina and had been raped repeatedly. And she said to us she saw no reason for living. And within a matter of months, she was dead of HIV and AIDS. And the second woman was extraordinarily feisty and was filled with anger. And she said to us, "You're always asking me to forgive and forget. I'll never forgive and forget. I never see any remorse, any repentance whatsoever. I look out my window in the morning and I see the men who raped me walking casually to work. And I ask myself, why should I forgive and forget?" And the third woman was a woman in her early 40s, a woman of immense dignity, who had been tied to a bed for 3 months and used as a perpetual raping machine. And I'll never forget her words. She looked at us and she said, "Whether I'm in the fields, whether I'm at market, or whether I'm at home, I will never get the smell of semen out of my nostrils." And I thought to myself as I stood and listened to this lovely, dignified woman, that the world has gone mad. It was the end of the 20th century. How are these things possible? And as you discuss all of the progressive impulses which now appear to be coming together in this country, I beg you to recognize that there's a world out there, and that it's a world where you cannot continue to marginalize 52% of the world's population, or we will never achieve social justice and equality. And there is no objective more honorable than that. Thank you for having me.